Okay, I'd like to open the Architectural Board of Review for today, June 27th, 2011. Starting with general business, item A, anyone in the audience would like to approach the board on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no one, I'll close that portion. Bringing back to approval of the minutes, ABR meeting of May 31st, 2011. Can I have a motion to open those minutes?
So moved.
First by Keith, second by? Second. By Gary. Do we have anything before item 1? No. Item 1, which is...
I have item 1, the number 2. Is this where we are in the
yeah, item 1 on the review of the final for citywide U.S. Highway 101.
Yes. For number 2 on the motion, I would just like to add it says study a taller alternative to the crepe myrtle tree, which insinuates a different species, but what we really want is a different variety of crepe myrtle. Okay. So I would just add variety after alternative. So it states study a taller alternative variety to the proposed crepe myrtle tree.
Okay, and for me on the motion, number 1 of the motion, if we could just scratch after wrought iron, everything after wrought iron, where it says, and with a drop of 8 to 12 inches at the end of the wall to signify the beginning of the OG curve. And we'll just leave it at to match the wall on the opposite side of the off-ramp. Okay, that's after some site visits and seeing exactly what's out there.
So it's off-ramp, period?
No, it would be with a stone cap under the wrought iron, period.
All right.
And the rest of it is just deleted. Okay, item 2, item 3, and that's it. So all those in favor of the minutes as reviewed, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Item passes. On to the consent agenda then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, can we get a motion to ratify the consent calendar for last week, June the 20th?
So moved.
First by Keith, second by?
Second.
By Gary.
Okay, so consent last week, June 20th, we had item A, 401 Old Coast Highway, got a project design approval and final approval as submitted. Item B, 435 East Haley Street, got a project design approval and final approval with conditions. And consent last week was reviewed by Clay Orell.
Great. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Against, motion carries. A motion to open the consent agenda for June 27th, 2011.
So moved.
First by Keith, second by Dawn.
Okay, for consent calendar today, we had item A, 1600 Anacapa Street. A review after final was approved as submitted. Item B, 1212 Coast Village Road was continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer. And item C, 923 North Milpas Street was continued indefinitely to the consent calendar. And consent today was reviewed by Chris Skilliland and Clay Orell.
Great. Thanks. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Against, the motion carries. And that brings us to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items and appeals. Nothing from the board, staff?
Yeah, you saw a project a while back at 3851 State Street. It was on the west side of La Cumbre Plaza where the bank is. They were going to do a architectural change for a Panera Bread restaurant. And that applicant came back to me. They've decided not to alter the building. They were just going to move one door and add another door and just put a few tables and chairs on the existing sidewalk. So I gave that a staff approval. So that won't be coming back. Although I have heard that La Cumbre Plaza plans to bring in an application to do an architectural style change to that entire building. of that whole side of La Cumbre Plaza. So we'll see something coming forward.
So they're
with
doing
that.
just the moving of the one exterior door.
Yeah, just temporarily.
So
until
nothing
they
on
come
the
back
exterior.
for a larger project.
Yeah, nothing on the exterior changes.
No, not right now. But like I said, we expect to see something coming in for that whole length of the
Okay,
building.
great.
The American Institute of Architects, the AIA, will be holding a design charrette. I don't have very many details right now, but I do have the dates. It'll be on Saturday, July 16th and Saturday, July 23rd. And as I understand it, the purpose of this charrette will be to inform the general plan discussion on residential density by showing examples of what various types of density buildings would look like. So you all are invited to that. We'll get more information for you.
Okay,
We can make another announcement at the next meeting or send you something by email.
that charrette will be held here, or
Don't
Well-
know for sure.
okay. All right.
The only other thing I have is that Paul Zink contacted us just saying he would be absent today.
Okay, thanks. With that, I'll end item D. Item E, subcommittee reports. I don't think we have anything since our last. So that brings us to the end of general business and the first item of the evening, 220 West Montecito Street. Here we have an applicant. Yeah. You could sit in the middle and put the microphones on. Just press that middle button there.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Ryan Shields. I'm here representing the applicant, T-Mobile West Corporation. We've been before you a few other times on this project. And to kind of condense the plan modifications, previously we had submitted applications with larger screen walls towards the rear part of the building that borders 101 and the freeway. Subsequently, we're coming back with antennas that are incorporated into column elements on top of the existing tower feature. So there would be, throughout the building, there are existing columns and kind of a lattice type tower built with 4x construction. And now we're coming back with antennas located inside these columns. It isn't quite ideal from a technical perspective as far as the antenna and the signal propagation, but it was kind of our last attempt at trying to get something to work on this building.
Okay. Well, okay. While this may not apply with your new application, I'll just read the last minutes just so that everyone be up to speed. Continued indefinitely to full board with the comments. Return with a completely revised plan that does not increase the height of the existing building and does not appear to be massive in scale as the proposed project currently does. Any additions to the building should be appropriate to the architecture and appropriate in scale. Okay.
Yeah, we are increasing the height. It was just technically not feasible to do that from both a signal propagation standpoint, but also to architecturally encompass these antennas in there. May I turn the page on this?
Yeah.
So A3 calls out the existing tower element comes out at 39 feet 6. And the columns that exist on the building, there's a landing on the second story on both sides that would sort of flank the tower. These columns currently measure, they're 7 feet 7 to the top of the column, and then it's about 2 feet of lattice work on top of there. And so we'd be proposing to replicate those exact same dimensions and column features on top of this tower. There's about 2.5 feet below the column that we would locate along the existing parapet of the roof and then go up from there. So overall, the height increase goes up to 47.2 from 39.6, which is within the 15 feet allowed by code.
Okay, is that the, that's it?
That is it. Yeah, the ground-mounted equipment stays in the same location, which is in the rear portion of the building. It's not visible from public view. It's hidden by some decorative plastered walls. And I can go back to the site plan.
Okay.
This is the ground-mounted equipment in the back. You can see the antennas located in the proposed column. And here's the site plan. The antennas will be connected to the ground-mounted equipment via coax cable that'll go up inside of a chase right here. That'll will not be noticeable. That's kind of blended in, and then it will penetrate the tower right there on the north side.
Okay. And, okay. Is that?
That's
Okay, so that with that, I'll bring it open for public comment. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to reiterate, all the new equipment in the tower portion would be totally concealed. There'd be no exposed equipment at all.
that's correct. The only all the penetrations that would take place. There's about a 2-foot tall parapet back here. So any penetrations with cabling to the antennas would take place below that sight line.
Thank you.
Thanks. Questions? Gary?
No questions.
Don?
No questions.
Chris? Okay, I don't see me. I have a question here on this elevation versus this elevation. I see how this is that raised up here over this, and I'm not seeing that here. Is that?
I think, let's see how that would be turned. I think you're seeing,
Oh, I'm seeing this beam here.
Exactly,
I
that
see.
beam
Okay,
is
that's the
larger.
beam, right?
Yeah.
No, that's this beam here. That's what you're saying.
exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay, I get
I
it.
do have one question.
Yep.
I just noticed that the elevation, maybe you mentioned this and I was looking at the plans, but on this elevation, it shows columns on both faces, but on the photo sim, you only have columns on the east and the west faces of the tower instead of the north and the south. You're showing the columns on the corners,
Yeah.
and on the photo sim, you're only showing it on the east and the west sides.
Yeah.
Are you missing
You know,
something?
no, I'm sorry, you picked that up, and that is correct. And this must have just carried through from a previous revision. Originally, we had 8 columns, and after reviewing it and taking a look at it, it was too massive. I mean, not
Yeah.
enough kind of open space in there. So we knocked that down to 4. Let me find the site plan.
So these don't exist anymore.
Let me see, those, how did we do that? Yeah, these 2 we took away and those 2. And that was actually at the owner's request. Subsequently, signal-wise, we end up losing some from these. We lose these 2 antennas, and so we only can get this one, and that one has to be skewed that way, but that's more on our side than yours.
All right.
Okay. So
Any feedback as far as if you like the 4 columns better than the 8? Or?
That's coming next. We just had to ask questions first.
Okay.
Okay, I have no other questions. Comments? Start with Keith. You ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a good solution, particularly in light of some of the previous proposals that, really increase the mass of the building. I think this integrates with the existing architecture, and it actually makes the building look better. Definitely think you only want the 4 columns. The only suggestion I would have would be maybe study whether these columns want to come a little further down the facade. Just they look a little stubby up there, but I'll see what everyone else says. I think it improves the building, actually. So I think it's a good solution.
Thanks, Keith. Dawn?
I wasn't here amazingly for the last 2. One was way back when, in 2009.
Yeah, it was a while back.
And I happened to be absent at that one as well, but I just reviewed the 2 previous submittals to get up to speed, and I agreed with the last comments, and I think that this solution is vastly superior than the last 2. I think that the detailing needs a little bit of work, but I don't think that it is a negative, massive, massing impact on the building. I don't think it's... I like the building as it is, but I don't think this is a negative impact necessarily to the building.
Okay. Gary?
Well, I'd like to congratulate you on a creative solution, but I think this being the tallest portion of the building and adding that much more height to this building up to the 47-foot mark, I think it's a little too large. I think I see where you're grabbing the architecture from, and I can see where this could seem like a good solution, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's bettering the building, as Keith said. And I do agree that as for having a cell tower, this is a really creative solution to do it. But I don't think it's adding to the architecture of this building. The tower height that's there right now is really compatible with the building size. But to add that much more height to this building, to that corner, I don't think it's adding to the architecture. And I think if this was going before us as a new building, we would ask for reduction of that. Or we would ask for some to minimize this architecture. So I, for one, don't think that this is the most pleasing design that could come up with. So I'm a little bit on the opposite side of the fence on this one.
Okay, Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm actually kind of in the same boat. I think I spend a lot of time across the street from this building, and it's already kind of imposing. It's quite tall and massive. It is a nice building. I like it. But to me, this, again, adds additional height at the highest point, and I think it's just going to feel that much more imposing. And I know it is a creative solution, and I can appreciate that. But I know these cell towers are really kind of controversial, and yeah, again, I think Gary hit the nail on the head when he said we probably wouldn't approve this if it was submitted with the original design of this building. So that's where I stand.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I'm going to ask you a question. I think, okay, I'll say my statement first. I think it's an innovative solution. I think the way you've approached it is really good. I think that it adds unnecessary height. However, I'm not convinced that it's altogether a loss here, because I think that what Keith was saying about lowering the columns as they hit the mass of the building, I'm wondering if the whole structure could not be lowered with those columns slipping down the wall of that and reducing the height of the overall structure. In other words, you keep this length consistent, but you lower everything so it slides down the face of the wall here on each side, and reduce the height between that and that. And I think when it becomes like a happy point there, it almost becomes like a designed floating cap to the tower, as opposed to almost a whole new floor that has this trellis on top. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just posing that question to you. I don't know. I'd like to hear what you'd have to say. You've heard my comments.
Yeah, there's, on top of there, from a site plan perspective, sorry about that, it's about a 2-foot parapet or so, maybe closer to 3, but
Looks
somewhere in
really
there.
tall here.
Yeah, and there is a roof.
That's almost a 6-foot parapet.
No,
Yeah, except that's the header of the window.
yeah, that's the
So it
head.
has to be up here.
So
It's
a
up there.
3-foot parapet.
Yeah, I mean, this is I purposely included the picture of the story pole in there, and so that is about waist level on me. So figure 2 to 3 feet somewhere in there.
It's right about here because that's him standing, somebody standing right there.
One of the things we definitely looked at was structurally what we had to tie into in order to make this work. And by the as-builts, it's there's some 12-inch block down below, and then I believe 8-inch on the top with some bond beams around there. So I think from kind of the system perspective of the building and the structural aspects, to really lower that, I guess everything's possible. It may be a little complicated on the structural side of things. We've also there's a skylight in there that takes up the majority of that. That's, actually a pretty nice kind of light shaft that comes through. This is a open
Wow.
staircase. And so I guess we'd have to look at it a little bit more from a structural standpoint.
Okay, I mean, that's. I think there's a solution. I think at this height, I think it just borders on just being the addition just because of the cell phone towers, and I think that it does. It's not fully comfortable for me. I feel that innovative solution though, and if you could find the ability to enhance both the building by bringing these things down a little bit and possibly bringing all of that down, I think that there's a good compromise there that could work, but
And
that's up to you.
we would be talking about only maybe 2 feet, maybe 3 feet, I guess, if we went to the extreme portion of the...
I'd like to make one comment before you answer that question.
Go ahead, Dawn.
If it's okay. I wouldn't want to see it lowered to look like a cap. I would prefer to see it lowered just enough to where there'd still be enough headroom to make it look like it's a balcony that somebody could stand up there. If you bring it too low, then it's obviously not an observation deck. I actually think proportionately it looks better that it looks like it's actually there's an ability for somebody to stand up there like these.
Well,
I
and
would
we-
like to see it match.
We kept the
that.
exact same dimensions, so that's about 2 feet 7 inches below that balcony edge, and that's exactly what you have here.
It looks like this dimension from here to here is just a little bit smaller than this dimension from here to here.
Yeah, and that's
Tony, you have a scale that
yeah, and that should be about 5 feet. So that's,
That's not 5 feet.
stronger than the smaller ones.
we played around with that a little bit as far as because they're flanked by both sides, and it got
So we
it
have
got
a-
pretty massive. I mean,
this
it's
is
just
3'6", and this is 4'6" above the parapet. So this is
To the-
3'6" above the parapet.
okay.
And this is 4'6".
This is 4
above
foot
it,
6.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, and this is about 2 foot 3 or 4 below, and this is 1 foot 9.
I think that the base should
1
be
foot 9 below.
the base should be the same, if not a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe exactly the same proportion as here or here, but it is a little wider, so it could stand to be a little bit bigger. I just think it could be lowered. I agree with you that it could be lowered slightly, but I wouldn't want to see it lowered to
Right.
to make it look like a cap.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I see that bringing it down more in harmony with this, I think, is a better solution for me. I'd like to see that. So I think that. One foot 6 or so, something like that. 1 foot 4, 1 foot 6. You know, I don't want to say exactly. I just think it should be closer to this. It just be consistent. Be consistent with this that's there now, and I think that that's where the design refine it till it
Is that a
gets to
motion?
that.
Okay.
That's
Is that a motion?
so. You want to see how it flies?
Let's fly it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for project design approval, return to consent for final with the following comments. Study refining the height of the new trellis and column elements in relation to the existing proportions on the building.
I'll second the motion, but I'd like the word refine and lower the overall height of the trellis, the word lower to be added to that,
That's fine, yes.
and refining the proportions and height.
Okay, and this would be to return back to full board in indefinite continuance or 2-week continuance, or what would you like to?
Structurally, I'm going to need some time to study.
So we'll say indefinite.
Yeah, let's just
Indefinite
do
continuance
indefinite.
back to full board with those comments you just heard. Any comments, Gary, Chris, on the discussion?
I just kind of wonder what the original architect would think of this.
Yeah. Have you had any discussions with the original architect?
Actually, the original architect came up with the first 2 plans that you guys saw. So,
I see.
And you came up with this one?
yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
All those in favor of the motion for indefinite continuance with this study, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? 2 against. Okay, motion carries.
Okay.
You restudy it, come back. And please come back with a significant drop, right? Or
What's
else,
that? Full
we're
continuous.
just going to
come
be
back.
going around and around again.
Return to full board. Okay.
What I'd like to ask you that is not official is that when you do the next round,
Yes?
that you show us a few more angles of the new proposal instead of just this view here, but maybe show us this side.
Also from the rear in
Yeah. Yeah, from this side of
Highway.
the street, from this side of the street, from this tower, and then from the other side.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I should have jumped in when you were making the motion. We need for you to make a finding of no visual impact. If you can make that finding, then this project doesn't need a conditional use permit from the planning commission.
impact.
What do you mean by
Okay.
no visual? I mean, usually it's no negative visual
Well,
impact.
no negative visual
Okay.
impact.
Yeah.
This one has negative visual impact. Maybe the new one that comes in will have. I mean, this proposal for me has negative visual impact. That's why I made the motion.
Yeah, your motion for approval has to include that finding.
But we didn't approve it.
It was
Oh.
a
We have
motion
a
for a
project
project
design
design approval.
So maybe it should
If you want to
come
change
back.
it to a continuance,
I thought it was like continued indefinitely.
No, we gave it a project design approval. So we,
How would your finding change if it came back? Think about that.
it wouldn't be negative
change?
anymore.
It would.
To him, it would, and to you, it wouldn't, because you didn't vote for it.
Yeah. But for me, it's negative right now.
So we just need to change the motion to make it an indefinite continuance back to the board.
Probably, I don't know what to do at this point. Maybe withdraw it and try it again, try another motion and another vote with a different action to
All right.
continue it.
Okay, so we'd like to withdraw the motion that was just made and propose, like to withdraw the motion that was made and propose a new motion. And Keith, you want to?
Try again. So this would be indefinite continuance back to full board with the comments as previously indicated to study lowering the new trellis element and refining its proportions in relation to the existing building.
I'll second that motion.
Second then. Under discussion, anything? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Two against. So motion carries for indefinite continuance.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, Keith, I didn't pick up on that. Okay, it gives us the ability to. Okay, our second item of the day, 822 East Cannon, Perdido Street. Our last item. I was just going to say, we're running late. Let's hurry up. Nope.
Tony, I have two new sets to present with. There's no changes. We just have a couple additional graphics. So it's the only difference. No other changes.
So this would be something I haven't had. So this is the second.
First look.
First look? Okay. First look. All right, take it away.
Very good. Good afternoon, Chair Hing and fellow board members. Edward DeVicente, architect with DMA, my partner Ryan Mills. We're here on behalf of Habitat for Humanity for a new project at 822 and 824 East Cannon Perdido. The Habitat team behind us, a quick introduction. We have Joyce McCullough, Executive Director, Jan Hubble, Board Member, and John Peterson, Director of Operations. So give an update to or an introduction as to where we're at in the process, and Ryan will take you through the design. So we've been working with staff and have gone through a PRT process thus far, and a couple weeks ago we presented to the Planning Commission for conceptual review as well, because we wanted to get specific feedback from them for some modifications we were requesting. Those modifications primarily were first for a reduction of the parking requirement. We have proposing one vehicle space per unit, plus the 3 required guest spaces on site. No modification there, just for the 1 per unit. A modification for building setback here between these 2 buildings. A modification for the bonus density of 12 units, and a modification for reduction of the setback in the front per implementation of pedestrian master plan. So Ryan will take you through the specifics of that. The Commission was very supportive of the bonus density and very supportive of the parking modification as well. Back and forth on the building separation, but understood it, but really requested that we not come back with any modifications for the front setback and to implement the pedestrian master plan. So we'll show you what that kind of means in more detail as we go along. So the project was purchased through RDA funds at the end of the year, last year, and we're moving ahead quite quickly. The project represents new homes for the 12 families. And so we've had very good feedback from staff and the commission as well, and it's important that we came to see you and get your feedback as well as we develop the design. So when we submit our formal DART, we're really well set up to move through expeditiously in the process. So we look forward to your comments, and I'll hand it to Ryan for the design.
Well, Chris, do you want to set over here? Do that. Okay, we'll start here just to locate us. So we're one parcel off of the corner of East Cannon Perdido and Milpas. There's a commercial property to our east, which is right up against the property line and the right-of-way here. And then this is a Taco Bell parking lot towards the back here. So we have primarily commercial along Milpas. And then to the west and south, we have a two-story apartment building and more dense apartment-type housing here, and then sort of a mixture behind us. So site selection was very important for this project. And let's see. And then also amenities for this being a low to very low income project, 100%. Those amenities became very crucial to the site selection. Start here. So this is a view directly across the street. This is, you can see, looking towards, let's see, do this upside down, looking towards is that the junior high or the high school? The high school down here. We have the laundromat facilities street, and then the McConnell's commercial buildings and Milpas down to this corner. And then looking at our property, here's that existing commercial property to the west, and this becomes important for design. It's our site slopes downward, and really towards the middle it becomes a pool. We're very low on our site compared to the neighbors all the way around. So this big commercial wall is a consideration as we move forward, but this is our current property, this hedge with the center drive aisle and the existing power pole and guy wire. Apartment complex to the left is shown here, which I just noticed they did some changes to, but we haven't documented in the last couple weeks. And then as we jump into the property, let's start at the bottom. So here's some site photos looking back towards the gate. You can see in the drive aisle, you start sensing the slope of the property. From to back, it's sort of a bowl, but I'd say there's about an 8-foot slope from this property to the west, and then 4 to 5 to the west where the two-story apartment building is, and it gets to 8 or 9 feet towards the back and the east. So let's see, there's a couple existing cottage structures with garages that we're proposing a demolition, and then other than that, there's some miscellaneous landscape. Here's a view towards the back, looking back at Milpas. There's our power pole, and then at the very back of the parcel, these are two parcels. So there's one has a deeper portion, which is seen here, and it's you'll see in a little bit. We've selected as a common open area because, despite its proximity to commercial projects in the corner of Milpas and Cannon Perdido, it's very private to the existing neighbors and quite serene for the parcel. So, neighborhood context. One of the goals we have with Habitat is, well, they enjoy anywhere from 40 to 70% volunteer workforce to execute their projects. So, one of the design directives for there, which they've done on previous projects in town, is siding type projects, something that's really friendly for people to put on a belt and swing a hammer, and just about anyone can do it. So that was a request to do a siding type project. So we took a little survey, and this is a sampling. There's more, but these are some of the better examples of architecture that we thought we might draw from within. This is all within 1 or 2 blocks of our property. So kind of a sampling of turn of the century, modified or pseudo craftsman, or just early California type architecture, which we're going to draw details from. Actually, let's go back to the site.
So with that, where we landed, we studied quite a few layouts and how we might do this thing from scratch. And really where we landed was a center drive aisle project, observing more or less the existing location of the driveway and trying to maintain, we'd like to maintain the existing power pole and guy wire. Again, besides volunteer labor, we are mindful of cost. They fundraise every penny to do these things, so we don't want to spend money where we don't have to. So with that said, in addition, we studied any which way we could do this, and this seemed to be the most efficient to comfortably sit 12 units. So we have a center drive aisle, and two sides we split 5 and 7 units. The units to the east, well, let me say they consist of 2 and 3 stories. The 2-story elements are in gold, obviously at the front for massing, and in the back we did another 2-story, and then the 3-story units were kind of pushed towards the center, and again, kind of utilizing this big, here you see the topo, the big site change, so they kind of nestle nicely in the middle of the site. Here on the east, this row, we actually took units 1 and 2 and broke them off the main building and turned them 90 degrees to address the street. Thought it was really important to have these front units not be the side of this project, but truly address the kind of the fabric of the streetscape, which we have elevations to show you. And in doing so, we also kind of were able to create space in between, just for air and peaks of views, but also ended up being for guest parking requirements as well. And here on the western side is a longer run, and we're up against, here you see at the bottom, the existing 2-story apartment building. And we were able to break away towards the back for guests. We looked at kind of parking back here, but one of the important features to us was this common open area. And we actually fitted a couple places, but we wanted it to be more than a token place. This project is a 12-unit project, the biggest for Habitat, and they intend on having more families here than usual. So we really wanted something beyond token and a really nice, safe community and play area for the kids, and a safe place for all the families to use away from the street. Let's see, am I forgetting anything, Ed? Oh, and then connections. So the layouts we chose are townhome units. For a kind of a sense of or pride of home ownership, one of the things we looked for was private garages in every unit. And in addition to that, we wanted to, wherever possible, do a direct connection to a private yard. It's something that's challenged in low-income housing, but so we have a private outdoor yard for nearly all the units. And where we don't, there's a couple like these up here, the smaller 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. They can have the front yard setback space. We have a covered porch area that is really for their unit, and in addition we have the private outdoor areas on decks above in the back. But wherever possible, we wanted real kind of private use for just family time, for barbecuing, and then also as a relief, the community area. Here's a roof plan. Actually, before I do this, why don't you talk about some of the sustainable goals we have, because it kind of plays into the project.
Absolutely. Habitat is always working to be very good stewards of on all the projects, and we're really they've had a lot of success around the country of being a good builder, and they're one of the largest builders now in the country. So locally, they've challenged us to come up with as green a building as we can, and this is something that we've grown some skills in applying passive house principles specifically. How can you get the most for your dollar on projects like this? And when you can passively heat and cool spaces by reducing your active systems, that's the type of solution that really resonates with this client. So we've done some initial energy modeling, and with fairly standard construction types and a couple of key details, really. And the roof spaces that we have, utilizing those roof spaces for solar, thermal, and also photovoltaic, we are getting very close to a net zero building. So all that will be worked out through the fine-tuning of the design as it's further developed, and specifically those systems. But it will also affect the architecture a little bit, which we've touched on here and kind of hinted towards, but certainly for project approval in the next phase, we'll talk more about those details related to shading and also window locations and sizing. And
Solar opportunity.
yeah, and the solar opportunities. But for the most part, we have the benefit of a very mild climate here in Santa Barbara, which is, if anywhere you can do net zero, it should be here. So you'll see some of that as we go through the process.
And as part of our PRT and DART, we were sort of identifying, they're asking us to identify area that we're reserving for those systems. So this is the roof plan that kind of shows you the south and the west orientation.
Well, it's truly, that's the plan. So it's really a southwest here and a southeast here. It's our fun Santa Barbara axis.
Okay, so here is the Cannon Perdido elevation. This is really the face of our project. Here's that commercial building, that commercial face to the east there, and then so you can see we in the architecture we're trying to address individual units again for that pride of ownership. That was really important to the homeowners in past projects, and it will be. So again, the kind of early California elements, we want to create as much variety as possible. And without getting too fussy or creating too much cost. So we're looking to get alternate colors perhaps on the siding, perhaps alternate patterns on the siding, probably looking at a hardy panel type of siding on this project. Vary asphalt shingle roof colors wherever possible, at least between buildings, if not closer to individual units. And while trying to have some sort of scale of efficiency with windows, we want to mix them up, but we're going to try to get uniform sizes and play with them as much as we can. But these three units are addressing the street, and the front doors are we've adjusted the units so they actually will be the front doors, so they're used properly and they're not some sort of token. We have a full porch here on the first floor, a little covered entry here, and a little entry one-story element here. Here you see some of the second-story elements as they go back. And then the three-story massing I did just in this khaki color. It's pushed back. Both are approximately 65 feet back from the property line, just to give you context. And we have some perspectives to show you how that looks in view. This is the driveway elevations. This being the longest gives you a good idea of kind of that individual unit flavor we're going for. Again, trying to vary color and materials as much as possible. We're introducing a couple unique elements. Some of these cantilevered porches above we have in a few places. Some these are required, some are not, but we want to introduce some different components along the way. We have room to play with covered entries. We can add some detail there. And then here we added a gable just to break up this three-story mass. Let's see, and then this unit's set back, and then here's our space for parking, which we're covering. We're still studying some of these, but we'd love to have some feedback on these parts. And then you can see there's garage doors on the base next to the entries. Every entry will be covered. Turning around looking towards Milpas. Here's the units 1 and 2. We're sort of seeing the side of them. And here you can see a couple of the outdoor porches or outdoor patios above on the second floor. And again, just trying to create little virtual buildings, or virtual townhomes for the families. Here's the grade where Taco Bell parking lot sits up higher. These are existing. There's a cluster of existing mature trees on their property that we'll maintain. And here's that neighboring commercial building relative to us, right on the face there. This is the fun. We don't have all the elevations at this point. this is an important one. This is the elevation facing the two-story apartment building. So this is a neighbor's view. So again, just pulling the materials or the virtual buildings through to the other side. There's our two-story, then we step back to the three. This third-story element is pushed back, and then here's our last second story and our common open area beyond. And these show our building envelopes relative to the existing grade, which changes a little bit. So this section is drawn through the middle of the site, kind of at the most aggressive massing, just to kind of give you context. So over here on Milpas, here's our commercial lot towards the back. Here's a one-story commercial element, and then they have this angled retaining wall, and it kind of shows you. And this is existing site. We're filling approximately 4 feet at the lowest to create positive drain and meet all the stormwater management practices. So it's a balance between we're trying to engineer as little as possible, but to make all that work. So we're filling about 4 feet, and even so, you kind of see the context with the one-story element to the east there, slice through our project, and here's the two-story apartment building to the west. And we're meeting the plates. We're matching their plates so far. We're 8, 9 in the middle, and then 8 again at the top. And finally, we just created, since we had a model that we used for design and energy modeling, we picked a few views which we thought were important. This is the Cannon Perdido view. So you can see it really disappears. We're across the street up against the other commercial building, so you can see the third-story massing really disappears. You obviously see it as you look down the drive aisle, and then it kind of peaks. This is the one on that side. It starts peaking up. And then here's a picture of our common open area in the back, again, just to get a sense of what it would be like in that space up against these buildings. So this two-story massing in the back kind of helps bring the scale down, and we're working currently with Ashley and Vance on the civil and Katie O'Reilly Rogers on the landscape. And that's it. So again, this is for conceptual review and comments going back to our BRT and DART process.
Okay, great. Let's just put it on the site plan for now.
The cover.
Yeah, just on the cover. Okay, with that, I'd like to see if there's any public comment. Nope. Public comment. Did you fill out a speaker slip? You can come and comment and then fill one out right after. Okay. If you come over here and pull this chair over here, and you can use this microphone right here. If you could just press that middle button for him there, and state your name and.
All right. My name is Bill Blackwell. My wife and I are owners of 910 Nopal. The upper right photo on your little grid there that you have of
Could you tell us
models.
About where that is in this site?
910 Nopal. Well, directly across from this site is Felinda, which is the first block
and
of Felinda.
Nopal's down here?
North.
Yeah.
Nopal runs north-south. So Cannon Perdido.
Oh, this is Nopal here.
It's right. The first full residential street
Okay.
in the vicinity.
Okay.
And it's great that there's, first of all, that there's no wall. That was our neighbor's main concern, was that there was going to be a wall in front.
On Cannon Perdido.
Correct, which would be open for tagging. So that was our neighbor's. Another concern, everything looks really nice. The enclosed parking area. I suggested you don't have garage doors. You're already limited to one space per single-family residence. There's probably going to be 2 vehicles, so these are going to overflow onto the streets. When you have a garage door, especially Santa Barbara, it's very common that an enclosed garage is used for storage or living areas. I think that it should be considered to do away with the garage doors. And this is a very high. I see you've already applied for the parking impact, and this is there's virtually no street parking most days of the week. around here. So it's just going to be very, very tight. When you add a dozen to 2 dozen plus work trucks of the residents, I mean, there's no parking on Canna Bernardino. Felinda is all commercial parking. There's no parking there, so Noble Street is going to be where everyone parks outside of these units.
We can respond. I don't know if this is time you'd like us
Yeah,
to.
just let him finish his, and then we'll ask you after. Okay.
That's my concern, is the enclosed parking areas. That there should not be enclosed parking areas, that they should be carports for parking.
Okay.
You think they should?
I think they should be carports, not enclosed garages, because
Because
enclosed garages are maybe not initially, but as time goes on, they're pretty much used for storage, if not converted into living areas.
All right. Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Okay, if you could fill out for Tony one of those speaker slips, that'd be great. Okay, so seeing no one else, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board, and then ask Ryan or Ed wanted to say something about the comments that the public have made.
Related to parking, and that's why we went to the Planning Commission early on, because we know the modification we're requesting is parking is a challenge in many neighborhoods in town. So what Habitat does in their current projects in town, the project recently completed in San Pasqual, it's part of the HOA that parking is limited to one vehicle per unit. That's the first mechanism, and it's a steep fine, and the board can, or the members can clarify if I misspeak here, but it's enforced through a heavy fine, and it's intended that these conditions are also part of this project. It's one of the things we spoke about and addressed with the Planning Commission, and they were comfortable with that, but requested that it be part of the conditions of approval. So if the project changes hands of ownership later, that it's part of the project and not the ownership of the parcel. So they're concerned about it as well. One of the questions that the Commission did raise was for some more information about the on-street parking. Is it fully utilized? What's available? What's not? So the transportation planning will be creating or pulling that data up as part of the DART process. We'll be going through that in more detail. But primarily the mechanism is part of the HOA, and all the new owners sign that they will only have one vehicle to their name, and they're not allowed to keep them at other locations, and DMV records are reviewed and such as well.
Okay. With that, I'd just like to bring back to the board for questions. And Keith, you want to start us off?
Kind of follow up on that. Maybe this is a question for the Habitat folks, but is Habitat going to maintain the project as property manager, or is it totally self-managed by the HOA? And specifically with regard to enforcing parking restrictions and requirements.
Yeah, my name is Joyce McCullen, the executive director, so I can answer that too. We have been able to do some of both on our previous projects. They were fewer than 5 units, so we've actually been able to have a couple of our board members sit on the Homeowners Association board. Because we'll have to abide more closely by the Department of Real Estate rules governing homeowners associations, we won't be able to have that close of a contact or oversight through the Homeowners Association, but we will sit as ex officio members on the HOA. We also turn from builder to banker, and the families all pay their mortgages directly to Habitat for Humanity, so we keep a very close oversight and management of the whole project based on that relationship that we have with the families as well. So we'll make sure that we see those DMV records on an annual basis as well.
A couple more questions. Some mundane site plan things. Trash enclosure. You have that somewhere? Because that always is a stickler.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Where is it?
We've been actually working with Marburg and Thomas Oreski, the city, regarding parking. We're providing trash recycling and green waste in each individual unit. So we have ample storage, usually behind the garages on the ground floor. So we're providing individual storage locations. And then we've already worked with Marburg on a pickup plan. So Planning Commission was concerned about 12 cans on the street. We're not doing that. So they will do backyard service. Cans go out in front of garages, gets picked up. So it's all individual. There may end up being a community yard waste or compost area, but it's for the most part individual.
All right. And in the PRT, did transportation have any comments about kind of your backup out of that? Okay. So
Yeah, we worked closely with Chelsea, or Ed did with Chelsea, and got turn templates out. And what you see is a conceptual sketch. We've modeled it. We were tightening it up and still adjusting things.
So you're
but
on
yeah,
top
they're
of that.
clear.
That's
They're
fine.
clear of that as well.
And then the last question is, there's two more questions. It looks like on the elevation and your plan, this
Yep.
porch kind of got switched, so
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
that'll get
It's a unit
worked out in
flip.
the
Yeah.
wash. Regarding the front yard setback modification, does this represent a proposed alternate, or what's the alternate if you can't, get that?
Let me show you that again. Yeah, we haven't tightened all these graphics, but what that meant, really, at the end of the day, to implement the PMP, in addition to our 10-foot standard setback, it was another 2-foot
2 foot 9 inch
2 foot
dedication.
9, which, so we were showing options. Really, there's a couple ways we could do this. What we proposed to the Planning Commission was, observing that, and we could have potentially a couple porch elements encroaching, but they urged us to kind of squeeze out of it completely. So, again, we haven't tightened the sign. We have space all along the way, so we're proposing to just get out of that. So what you see here, all of these elements will pull back a little bit, and we're still playing with, inches and feet here.
And more specifically to the design and what it means in the pedestrian master plan. There's guidelines in the master plan for different intensities of projects and neighborhoods. Is it blown up?
The graphic is right there.
So here's the recommended configuration. This is for a residential area with a 6-inch curb, a 3'6" furnishing or planting zone, a 6-foot sidewalk, and a frontage, which is actually on the property. Transportation would like this to go to 4 feet, actually. So it's when you add them up, it's 10.5 feet. The current curb face now is about 7 feet, varies between 6'9" and 7. So the 2'9" dedication would be essentially the sidewalk. The back of sidewalk would be pushed back to that line, and it would create a parkway opportunity in the front for utility metering, and also we're looking at maximizing the green there for what the utility meters don't take up.
But would have to transition to both sides as well for now.
And then maybe one last question. I noticed that this is a covered guest space, and so if there's a connection between those two buildings, you still have to do the separation modification, or I guess what I'm suggesting is there any way you
I'm
could?
thinking that's covered. This one is covered.
Oh, okay.
It shows
This-
covered on the elevation.
Yeah.
Did it? Okay.
I guess where
That's-
I'm going is perhaps there's some way you can connect those and get around that mod.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and we're still actually looking. We're studying, trying to bundle some of this parking. So some of those pieces are still moving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Dawn?
I had the same question about the mod because you showed this space is covered, and I was asking why you needed the mod when it was a connection.
Right.
So I don't need to ask that question. You keep so why did this project go to Planning Commission? I didn't understand that part.
We asked to go to PC concept review as early as possible because of the parking mod. The 1 unit per space, I mean, that was a big deal. If we didn't have support for that, that would have huge, obviously parking affects sort of everything, especially when you have a density like this. So we just wanted to see if they'd support us early before we got any part of the game changer.
And their final outcome was?
Fairly unanimous. They had very strong support for that.
With no controls on how they control it?
There's, yes, the
Or do they enforce it and control it?
They want, again, that's the conditions of approval,
Yeah.
that those HOA conditions are part of the conditions of approval to the project, not to the property owner. So it's ties to the property when they take their final action.
You know, I might add, really, I felt like sort of the thinking behind it was city requirements for 100% affordable housing projects like this, rental, that's sufficient. That is what they demand, is one parking space per unit. So this project is unique because it's home ownership, really only due to kind of what the what Habitat enjoys to provide home ownership. But essentially, it's the same renters as would be in any other typical 100% affordable project, but they just get a unique program through Habitat to become homeowners. So it's the same demographics, same income levels as a rentable project. So that's really what helped Planning Commission support that.
Okay.
So they're owning the project so that their children get bigger and want cars, but you've already explained that you have systems in place that apparently keep people from letting their purchasing cars for their children.
Well, I mean, and I don't know if Joyce wants to speak to this, but they're involved. I mean, Habitat really encompasses that whole family's life, from home ownership to how to care for this and beyond. They actually look forward to and celebrate when people, and they have a high success rate of people moving through the program, and once they hit incomes, they actually burn their deed and move on. They have a lot of success stories, so that's part of the program. So you aren't going to get 3 incomes and own 3 cars here.
So the project then reverts back to Habitat to sell to another.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, no further questions.
Gary?
A couple of questions. One is retaining walls. Are we adding retaining walls for this 4-foot elevation?
Section?
Yeah, let's take a look at the section. That's a really good question.
What's going on?
And this is conceptual, and it's what the civil engineer is studying it right now, primarily on the east end here. But on the west end of the property, there currently is a 4-foot retaining wall on the property line, and we'll be filling essentially up to it and be about equal with it on this side, and that runs the whole length. On the back portion of the property, there's an existing about 4-foot retaining wall. For the property behind is higher, and that will stay. We don't need to add any dirt on the back part of the lot. We're already sufficient, high enough for positive drainage. And then on the east end here, the neighbors are sloping down to us, but we propose to fill without a retaining wall. Otherwise, you could create this kind of big void swale if we retain that. But this would be a negotiation with the neighbor property if this indeed did get filled up to that wall that comes down now.
And will, at street level, is there any proposal for a grade elevation?
Along the street on the west end, it's at about 21 feet currently. As you get to the commercial property, it's about 23.5 feet. So it's between 2 to 2.5 feet that it slopes across the 103-foot property, and we'll be pretty much right at that 20.5 foot there. We're pretty much equal getting to the back of sidewalk, and primarily this has to meet accessibility requirements, and so on. In this building here, along the front, you see we have an accessible path from the front sidewalk all the way to the back common area, and the 2 required accessible units will be served off.
So retaining walls, these 2 sides, level at the street level, a little increase in the back.
Actually, the side closest to you, we're filling up 4 feet, so we will be even. So we're actually filling against the retaining wall.
Eliminating an existing retaining wall on the west side.
Then there was another question I had about roofs. I saw a notation on here, either on the elevations or something about just changing the coloration. Is there an elevation change between these roofs?
Again, being early, we're looking at that. Nothing great at this point. As we work with Civil to kind of fill this site, we're going to look for opportunities, especially the eastern block. If we can break that, the pads or the finished floors may be breaking. So we're looking for those opportunities. It's hard to say now for sure.
Okay, and I think as far as parking goes, I don't know if it's within our purview, but the public has a good point on that. And one of the things I was concerned about is the guest parking. So there's 3 guest parking. Is that correct?
Yeah.
There's 3 guest parking. And would off-street parking be permissible with this, or would they not be allowed to park off-street like some of the housing authority projects have?
That's the owners of the units. Could they park on street?
Yes.
No, it's deed restricted and part of the HOA that they own only one vehicle. So the guests are for just that. Any friends or family that come over to visit on a short-term basis. And the 3 spaces we're providing meets the zoning code. There's no modification requested there.
Okay. Thanks. That's all.
Thanks. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could one of you do just a quick review of the modifications again?
Sure. Number 1 was the bonus density, which obviously the Planning Commission supported. Number 2 was the parking modification, again with support. And then the space between buildings were the...
At this location.
What's that?
At this location.
Yeah. The required space between buildings was our 3rd modification. And then the front setback, the observing the pedestrian master plan was the other one we requested.
There's a total of 4.
Yeah, previously in our application there was 5 because we were going to request the space between buildings down here as well, but that's gone away so far, as others may as we study this further.
So I think Keith and Don sort of touched on this before, and that you don't have a covered guest parking up towards the road. If you did cover that, does that negate that need for modification?
That's here.
Yeah, if it was covered, yeah.
Okay. And
Really?
then
Yeah.
my only other question, and I think you sort of touched on this a little bit, and that's in regards to the open space. I think you may have answered my question. Now, I was going to ask if you had thought about sort of centralizing it within the site somewhere a little bit more, so there's sort of equal access to it. And it sounded to me like it was maybe just a better location at the back.
There was, we looked at that. There is a few reasons why we put it there. It just, I think as a whole team, struck us on our site visits at that location. There was just something about it that felt really good as far as privacy and noise. Okay.
Okay, I have no questions. Most of the questions been asked already. So I'll go on to comments. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Talked about the site plan. I think it's the right site plan. It's the right diagram. I like the way the front units address the street. I like the location of the open space. Again, having worked on similar kind of long sites like this, that's the most efficient layout. So I think that's good. I think mass, bulk, and scale is compatible. I think having the massing in the middle of the site plan is a good move. Again, it just helps with the compatibility. So I think those are all really positive. To weigh in on the modifications, I think the key to the parking, as we've kind of touched on here, is just really thinking through the restrictions so that the neighbors can be a little more satisfied and confident that it's going to work. I think that if you can connect on this conundrum here, I would rather see these two buildings connected than pushing this over and combining. I like the way you've broken it up with small gaps. So I think shoving this over to the property line with particularly 3 stories would be not a positive move compared to connecting them. So if you can get around that mod that way, look into that one. So that being said, the trash, I know that having them in the garage can seem like a simple solution, but as you develop your landscape plan, really look into that so that there's places out front where people can leave them for collection that aren't in landscape areas, because I've gotten kind of burned on things like that. So as you develop your landscape plan, look at that. I think also as you develop the landscape plan, and further down the road, we'll want to see kind of the window layout of your neighbor apartment building here, so you can address privacy conflicts with the neighbors there, with your location of your windows and the landscape use. I think the townhouse is a great solution for this type of ownership project, and having private rear yards so everyone has their own private open space is great. Architecturally, if we go to that elevation, maybe the long one.
That's against the neighbors. This is sort of our.
I guess I'll buy into the use of siding, although having novices up 3 stories on scaffolding, hammering, kind of, I don't know about that, but we'll look aside on that. If you do go this direction, I understand you want to try to differentiate units for individuality's sake, but I'd be careful of this kind of really strong contrast. It's kind of a fine line. It can start to get a little Disneyland looking. So I think there might be ways, just with different detailing and different fenestration combinations, that you could still define individual units without having really strong contrast, like in the colors and that. And for instance, you might consider that this is obviously one building, so it's complete to itself, and same thing here. Okay. So that would be my only kind of throw that out there for as you develop the architecture. Sure. Just maybe keep that in mind. But I think it's looking like a great project, and look forward to seeing it develop.
Thanks. Dawn?
Yeah, I agree with Keith. I like the project, and I think that it's sited well, and what you guys have done with the placement of the cameras on the site is good. I agree with Keith on just further refining the massing and getting some variation in height amongst the buildings, or how you deal with the individuality is going to be an issue that I know you'll get there eventually with. The front elevation, if I could see that one really quick. I like it, and I like, in particular, I like this kind of proportion. This is a little bit big, but I think it's only because this is smaller. This is so tiny. So this doesn't, I started looking at it later and thinking it's really not that big, but compared to that, it looks like a bigger expanse, a bigger span, which it is. And I guess the reason I like that one is because it made me think that the building was really, really old. And I could see this project being built, and then people driving by going, oh, look, they renovated a really, really old building. So it has that kind of proportion, and this one doesn't so much. So I don't know if it's a deal breaker or not, but I just really, really like this one. This one I don't dislike necessarily, but I didn't quite understand why one portion of one of the buildings you showed as stucco, and then the rest of it you showed as wood siding. I guess that's really a question.
Have to look.
But
being conceptual, at this point we're not. I may have left one base. Is that one base of one building?
well, it's actually the middle portion of one of the buildings. It's right here.
As conceptual, I was just sort of looking at that.
So I would maybe not do that if the whole building is going to be wood. I was actually going to say that I think that there should be garage doors, but I think that I don't really design for keeping things open just so people don't convert them into livable space. I would prefer to see whatever's going to be in the garages, whether it's cars or anything else, be hidden and safe. So that would be my preference. And I like the open yard in the rear. I think it's a good spot. I think that it's a safe spot, but it also so people could keep an eye out on the kids, but it's also not necessarily going to be. If it's in the middle, it'd be kind of a sound trap, and everybody would be really loud in the center of the. Yeah. Roof line breakups I mentioned. I think you, like Keith said, you can eliminate that mod by connecting the two buildings with covered parking when you put the garage doors on, hopefully. But I'm not necessarily, and I'm not usually in favor of supporting front yard setbacks. Just, I don't know of any instance where we've really done that, and said we try not to set a precedence for doing that unless there's some really, really good reason why it has to be that way. This is a pretty long site, so maybe a relief from the pedestrian master plan is an easier way to go. I don't know. Seems like an excessive setback, and I'm not sure why it is on that street, but I don't know. That's my take on that. That's it for me.
Okay,
I think it's a good project.
I'll talk about the mods first. The parking modification, which seems to be a done deal, is the one that I would be opposed to the most. I feel like the place is underparked, but I don't believe that's in our purview. As far as the modification for this, I'd rather you see you go modification, because I saw that you had a tree planted in this area, and I'd rather see a tree planted here with a canopy of a tree than a roof structure over it. So if you can go for the modification of that, it's certainly an acceptable modification. I think that the building distance is not a problem, and having it opened would be far superior to me than it would be to have a roof over it, especially a guest parking space with a roof over it. So I do see the advantages of connecting the two buildings, but I also see the disadvantages. I think it'd be better to have an open space. The front yard setback, boy, I would say every single time I'd slam down and say, no, I want that front yard. But in this case, we have a commercial building that's right next to you that runs right up to the street, and we're adding to that as opposed to taking away. And we have a generous portion. It's 12'5" here, and it's 10 feet here, and it's 12'4" here, and you're putting nice porches, and you're making them neighborhood friendly. So I'm going to say in this particular instance, I'm completely in favor of your modification for the front yard. I think it's a good thing, because I think what you've done is you've really addressed the street towards neighborhood friendliness, as opposed to just saying we want a modification and we've put the building up as far as we can. No, you've worked things out. You've got things in front of here. I would like to see this other unit right here, that porch be a little bit more incorporated as this covered porch is, where there's a little bit of usable space in front of here. You've got the gable that comes out there. Not a lot of usable space. Sure, it's identifiable, but it's not really something that someone can sit there and have some potted plants and grow a tomato or something. The massing, as far as the 3 stories goes and all that, we're getting really high up there. I mean, you're with adding the 4 foot of grade and all this, but I think it's an acceptable height. I think the way that it is, you have the building short in the front, short in the back, and the high stories in the middle. I think it's an acceptable size. So I'm not really opposed to the massing, except for the fact that the parking modification. I would rather there be more parking. I agree with the public. When we got garage doors, they're going to be closed off. They're going to be little workshops. They're going to be things. And it's just the nature of people. We do that. We're going to put kayaks in there. We're going to put our bicycles in there. We're not going to be able to do stuff because it's nice, usable space and it's covered, and that's what's going to happen. And people are going to end up parking in the street. I don't know what the solution to that is. I mean, I think I would be the only one that would say take a unit out and add some parking, but I kind of feel that way. I kind of feel like drop it down to 11 units and put some extra parking in there. So, but I do love the project, and I'd like to see it go forward. We've seen many things on this particular lot already. This isn't a new area for us. So I think it's a really nice program. So.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have very little to add. I think it is you guys have done a lot of really good things here. I like the variation in the facade. I was looking in one spot in the courtyard elevations, and that's on the east elevation. You do have a lot of variation in style, and looking back to the west, that's actually quite similar. So I would almost encourage you to downgrade the east elevation a little bit, and maybe even upgrade the west. Other than that, there being that you have separate styles for each unit, you're going to run into some awkward connections in between each townhouse. So that's going to be something to look into as you move forward. But beyond that, again, I think that the board had a lot of good comments that I agree with, and right now I don't have much else to add. I'll just look forward to the landscape plan as it develops.
I think we had a lot of good comments. I think overall, what I liked right off the bat is that you learned a lot from the last two applications that we've had, and you have grasped the layout plan that was hammered out over a couple of years, I guess, to get to that stage, and I think it works. I think about the mods. I think that only for the way the Habitat works and the ownership and turning these properties back over to Habitat after the people get out, and that kind of control. That's the only thing for me that makes me want to accept the parking. Otherwise, I think that the parking is really, if it wasn't for that, I really think you're underparked, and I think that there would be an impact in that neighborhood, which has a significant impact already if you've ever gone there after hours and tried to get a park on Nopal Street or something like that. I mean, that whole street is just filled with cars. So that concern to me seems to have, I feel better after the conversation we had and understanding how that works. I think that your layout is really good. I tell you, one of the things that impact me is that when we talk about mass, bulk, and scale, I think that you are in that ballpark, but I think that the project really is at the outer end of blowing up the envelope, so to speak. And the reason why I say that is I put myself down in this corridor, and I walk down this corridor of this 3-story building and this 3-story building, and I look at that, and I try to feel what that's going to be like. And it feels very tight. It doesn't feel airy at all. And when we talk about trying to make mods go away, and I have that feeling, it impacts me when I have to make a statement about the mods, when I get that feeling that things are tight. So it's almost like I say that, I'd love to see you not have a mod for buildings being too close together. And at the same time, I'm not quite keen on the solution to put a roof there because everything feels so tight. The fact that you open it up and you let light come in there between these two masses and this, I think is a really good thing because it lets that corridor breathe, right? And so there's a pulling and tugging there at me to be able to say that I'm really happy with the mass, bulk, and scale. But I think that you are in that zone, and I think you really have to work at massaging this to make it work. On the front mod here, I have a little sympathy with what Gary says, and on the other side, I tend not to want to give up on the front yard setback. And what I'd like to see is, as when you come back, I'd like to be convinced of whatever direction you take. Because if you, the little drawing that you showed that what they want to do is they want to bring the sidewalk in, put the little median in there. What I wouldn't like to see is that you ask for the mod, it pushes the building up, and they then, instead of pushing this in and having a green space, they just have a wider sidewalk. In effect, all you get is less green, but you get more concrete, and it goes in. And I'm wondering if that's really a benefit, you see? So it depends on how this from here to here pans out in your proposal and how it meshes with what they're proposing. Because if I say no, no to the mod, and they get to put that green space in and it becomes a really nice walkable thing with the green on one side and stuff, that's a huge benefit. And if I say, yes, give the mod, and then we just have this wider concrete that slaps up to the corner of this building, you know, I don't know if that was a great decision. So I'm looking for you to convince us when you come back that the direction that you want to take is going to reinforce the betterment of the public in that regard, right? Let's see. I think, you know, you really have to look at the trash again because of this is really being tight, that sort of thing. And then the last item I want to talk about is the style. I know that I mean, what you've done really looks good. I fall on the side of Keith here, who is saying, you know, be careful about the Disneyland-esque pattern. The other side of it that I'm really sensitive about is that Habitat for Humanity have built these buildings all around the country. And a lot of the places they have built are like these single or two duplex story structures. And they have nice yards and that sort of thing. And you know, you see a lot of pictures of the people building these things, and there's a house over there and one here and one here. I don't see a lot of these where they are this tight conglomeration. And so when I look at that and I see that you are applying the same type of architectural style with the siding and stuff like that you see people, you know, working together and building, I kind of wonder if you shouldn't give yourself a little bit more thought as to the style that you really want to use. Because one of the things when I walk into this is that this is a Habitat for Humanity in Santa Barbara. Does it feel like this is Habitat for Humanity in Santa Barbara? What does it say about having a structure, one of their programs, in a place like Santa Barbara? And I try to walk in there, and is this like, wow, you know, if you look at the one in Santa Barbara, it's really, really nice. It reflects their style, their presence, their climate, everything. I don't get it. You know, I don't feel that it's really there. What it feels like to me when I walk down there is like Old Town Boston with all the clapboard siding, and it's really close together, and it's tight, and they're very narrow, and so I'm not saying that it can't work, and I really not. This is really just to push you guys to think about that and see if that's where you really want to take it. You know, if you carry on with the way you're going, it could be quite successful and you could do it. But are you pushing yourselves to get the best out of it? You know, and for Habitat for Humanity in this town, Central California, you know, that kind of thing. That's all I want to see. Okay, great. That's it. I think otherwise a great project. You know, I'd love to see you guys come back with a, you know, massaging someone. Okay, so I think what you want to do then is I think you've gotten from us, you know, we're across the board, we're pretty comfortable with what you're doing. We're pleased with the project. We've given you our comments, and hopefully our motion would just put some point things for you to consider as you come back. And you want indefinite continuance? Yes. Back to full board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make just one last comment on the reason that I had an issue about the front yard setback. I think I should clarify that. Yeah. And it's because I own a house downtown that's really close to the street. And if And it, to me, 3 more feet would have made me feel a lot more comfortable. Right now, if you brought that, you're asking for a mod that I think would bring the building about 3 feet closer to the street than the way you're showing it. If you had to implement that,
Maybe we didn't explain that the right way. What we're observing, typical city zoning setback, we're back 10 feet plus. It's in addition, once you add the PMP over it, that's what we were originally. Should I repeat all that?
I don't know.
We
Probably
are
picked up.
currently, what you're looking at currently observes typical city 10-foot front yard setback. It's when they layered on the additional pedestrian master plan.
Right, I understand. So
currently
so you're
we're-
you're not showing the master plan that you're saying you're really going to have to comply with that, even though you're not showing it.
Because of planning commissions, they were pretty strong feelings to observe both, so we're heading that direction.
So
to
that
observe
means,
both.
what that means to your project, if I'm not mistaken, is that whole sidewalk moves back 3 feet,
A little less.
2.5 feet. So that puts the building, instead of 10 feet away, it puts the building 6.5 feet away from the sidewalk. You're moving, if you look at this drawing, you'd be moving,
Yeah, that's right.
9 feet. You're only
Yeah.
losing the foot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, I don't want to belabor this, but my
either
point
way-
is that
Sure.
it's because those units, it's their only private open space. Really, that's what you're.
No, that's not right either.
Well, it's the one they're using. You're pitching to us that you're providing the covered porches as an amenity along with the common open space. You're pitching the front porches as a place for people to hang out on and kind of sit and grow tomatoes, whatever. Maybe that was Gary's comment. But because they are the spaces for the residents, all the more reason they don't have big backyards. These front 2 units don't have big backyards, right? The other
They have-
spaces do.
Yeah.
These-
They have required out. I'm sorry to interrupt, but they do. Just to be clear, I agree with you. These actually have required open spaces in the back on the second floor. They have those. That's the
I'm
required.
talking about ground floor,
Right.
where to barbecue,
Right.
where these people going to barbecue and have people
Sure.
over. If that's the only space, I'm concerned about it being too close to the street.
Sure.
Just because
Yeah.
my house, I have the parkway, I have to maintain it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bummer that you guys are having to move the house, move the whole structure back, and then you have this parkway that now you have to maintain, but it does nothing for privacy
Right.
for your residents. So
But just to be clear, we intend to observe both of those. We're going to try to observe traditional setback and the pedestrian master plan. So that's sort of the direction we're trying to get. to.
so you're not proposing a mod?
We did initially through planning commission, but they had very strong feelings to make us. They'd like to see us observe both. So that's what isn't reflected here, but our intent is to get there.
Okay, I missed that.
I didn't
whole
make
part of
that-
the
maybe I didn't make that
conversation.
clear enough,
Did you
sorry.
guys get that too? I've been making comments about my concern when I didn't know you were planning on bringing the building back. Sorry.
No.
Okay. So if I could have a motion that would give them indefinite continuance and that would just hit some of the points that we made for them to consider when they're massaging the building, that would be good. Thanks, Keith.
So the definite continuance back to full board with the following comments. The board is supportive of the site planning and overall mass, bulk, and scale of the project. We look forward to the applicant coming back with a preliminary landscape plan. Let's see some of the other comments. The board is supportive, or finds that the modification for the parking doesn't have aesthetic impacts, and is happy to see that or agrees with your decision to respect the pedestrian master plan. Board looks forward to refinement of the architecture to unify overall stylistically the architecture while still maintaining the individuality of the units. That's about all I have.
Okay, do I have a second? Somebody want a second? Or?
I'll second.
Thanks, Chris. Under discussion?
Under discussion, just for your first comment, I would just add for the applicant to show the location of significant existing trees on the site, which we didn't talk about today, and also adjacent canopies surrounding the site. You had mentioned, I think, on the Taco Bell lot, like to see the extent of those, and also the buildings that surround the site as well. We have one shown down here, but I'm not sure what's happening in the other areas.
Okay, good. Any other on discussion? No? All in favor of the motion as